In this overview, we're going to have a look at using Excel and PowerPivot, and the concept in Excel PowerPivot, which is the ability to use a data feed. Now we can do that with the Dynamics AX report. So when I go to the reports library where all the Dynamics AX reports are stored, if I run the report specifically from there, and you'll see when we get up to the portal, what I can do is run the report and save the report as a feed. So this is an important capability. Essentially what it is providing the report as a tunnel or a channel into the Dynamics AX data. Now of course the reports framework in Dynamics AX looks at the security model in Dynamics AX, so if you're going to consume the data through the report, then you're also adhering to the security model in Dynamics AX. So I'm going to run this report, for example. Now I could run any report. That's a typical sort of transactional listing type report. So I'll let the report run, and what we want to have a look at is this option here, which is the feed. So we can save this report as a data feed. So we're not necessarily interested in it running at this particular point in time. We just need to let it finish so that we can save a feed on this report. So you'll see it's a simple report listing out values and the calculated net book value, for example. So what I can do here is I can choose to save the feed, and I'm going to do it and save it into my documents library, for example. So just save it in my desktop documents here. So the feed's been saved. Now I can go into Excel and I can open up PowerPivot. And then one of the features of PowerPivot is the ability to use a data feed. So we'll see the same image button here. So now if I browse to the documents, I can look for that feed. So this is the asset listing report. And you'll see that's actually a very small file. It's only a kilobyte. So there's no data stored in there. It's simply a reference to that report. So if I open this up and we click next, it's going to do an analysis of that report. I get a table, and so it's looked at the table, so we can simply say close. It's found 164 rows out of that listing. Now what we can do, for example, is now do a pivot chart on this. So we can say OK. So now we're into Excel, so we can use the normal characteristics of Excel. So what I can start to do is say, well, I want to be able to slice this report by asset group. The data that I'm looking at is my net book value. I want to see the individual assets in my report. So we can start to actually use that feed and the columns of the report as a data source, similar to using a cube, for example. Now, of course, I've got all the capabilities that I have in Excel, so if needs be, I could change that to a pie chart if that sort of made sense. But the interesting thing is, of course, I have the ability to use, of course, the grouping as then a slicer for the report. So essentially I'm looking at net book value as a percentage for the different groups. So if I look at buildings, for example, it's going to give me that percentage piece there. And of course you can change this relative to how you want to show data labels, for example, on the chart if you want to show values or things like that. So of course that's standard Excel formatting. But the key thing is that you've got that data source, and then using, of course, the refresh capabilities in Excel, essentially it'll run the report and get the data values back. The important thing is that feed you saw when we saved it is simply just a reference to the report. So we're not storing data outside in that feed. So the interesting thing is relative to security. When someone else tries to run this report, then they need to have access to the underlying report feed. Of course, if you save in Excel, you'll save, of course, those values in that Excel spreadsheet. So if someone who has the security sends it to someone else, of course, they're sharing the data that they potentially shouldn't have. But the underlying access to the report will, for the initial user that runs the report, will, of course, adhere to the AX security model. But the key thing here is that using the feed concept on a report and using the ability in PowerPivot to consume this gives you a quick and efficient way to get access to some of that static report data and use it to do some further analysis that typically might be done by an end user for more advanced kind of analysis or presentation capability.